Watch your language. My mum was alive today, she'd be flaming, I tell you. Well, it's been a quiet fortnight. I just want to say this first of all. I just want to say thanks. Thanks to this union. Do you know, when you're in a struggle, and when everything's coming at you, the whole of the establishment is coming at you, you find out who your friends are. And I tell you, one of the best friends we've ever had is this union. And I want to say thank you. I want to say a personal thanks to Len McCloskey for standing by so solidly. And also all your reps on the NEC and throughout the Labour Party who've been our advocates. Not personal advocates for Jeremy Corbyn or me, but just personal advocates for democracy within our party and to do the right thing, stand by our members, to have a say in a leadership election that's now coming. I just want to thank you for that solidarity and loyalty to those principles, and I'm really grateful. 10 months ago, you know, we launched a project when Jeremy Corbyn was elected. And our ambition, let's be clear, is to radically transform our society, to make it radically fairer, more equal, more democratic, but based upon a prosperous economy, but where that economy is both sustainable economically and environmentally, but above all else, where that prosperity is shared by all. That's the society that we argued for in the leadership election for Jeremy Corbyn, and that's the society that Jeremy received an overwhelming mandate to transform the Labour Party to create. And that's what we've been doing over the last 10 months, with your support. My job in terms of when appointed as Shadow Chancellor was to tackle that one key issue that lost us, to be frank, 2 elections. That was about restoring economic credibility to the Labour Party. And you know, with your support, we got to work early, systematically, using the advice of our affiliates like Unite and others. We set up a programme of work which I think has been, to be frank, incredibly successful. Many of you have participated in it. We set up our Economic Advisory Council with world-leading experts, economists, Nobel Prize winners who were going to give us macroeconomic advice and then also test the instruments that we wanted to use when we went back into government. And that worked. We then set up review after review of the tax system, HMRC, the Treasury, and yes, starting work on a review of the Bank of England. A host of experts came forward to advise us and assist us. Across the trade union movement, academics, economists as well, and yes, entrepreneurs as well. And our ambition was to raise the level of economic debate within this country, going beyond the inanities of the Osborne economic debate, which was really reduced some of the economic discussions that we were having to nothing more than platitudes and slogans. And so what we did is we went on a tour all around the country with our economic advisors. Seminars, lectures. We launched an annual State of the Economy conference, which was packed out. We could have 800 people turning up on a Saturday, final day, to talk about the economy. We could have sold those tickets 3 times over. Every one of our seminars and lectures has been packed out with trade unionists, business people, academics, economists. But I tell you what's been really refreshing throughout the whole thing is the number of young people that have engaged, that really got involved in this debate and discussion. And what's come out of that, basically, is a view about how we can lay the foundations for tackling that issue of credibility. And the whole ambition that we had is we used the first 12 to 18 months to lay those foundations, win the argument, hegemonize, dominate the debate on the economy, and that would then give us the basis then to dynamize the whole debate within our society as we ran into the general election. And you know, it worked. It actually worked. In terms of the polling, there's been lots of criticisms from some about the inability of Jeremy Corbyn to attract support. When he was elected in September, after the May loss of the election, in most polls we were 10 points behind. In some we were 14 points behind. By the time we got to April of this year, not only we matched the Tories in the opinion polls, we'd actually gone ahead of them. Gone ahead of them. And they said some of the critics, well, plotters, and I'll watch my language, some of the critics have said Jeremy couldn't win elections. This was an electoral disaster. And yet when you look at the objective tests that we've faced, every parliamentary by-election we've won, 3 out of 4 we've increased the majorities. And here's the irony. At the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting a couple of weeks ago, which to be frank, some have described as a near-lynching, some have described as a bear pit, when many, many members of the PLP were getting up to criticise Jeremy about electoral performance, here's the irony. The first item of business was to welcome the new Member of Parliament, Labour Member of Parliament for Tooting, who doubled her majority under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. You tell me the contradiction there. But then when it came to the mayoral elections, we won every mayoral seat contested. And I tell you what I just found it thrilling, was the way in which Marvin won in Bristol. This is a black man living in a city that built its way on slavery. What an achievement. They then said, well, let's look at the local government elections. And if you'd have read the media in terms of local government elections, you would have thought they were a disaster. In fact, in local council elections, we held on to every council that we thought, or the media thought, we would lose. We matched Ed Miliband at his very highest in terms of electoral performance. We laid the foundations at that stage for the next stage in terms of electoral success. And to be frank, we will argue for a general election for whenever it comes, because I want to get rid of the Tories at the first opportunity. And we felt that time was coming. And in terms of economic policy, let's just go through the foundations of what we were saying. We were saying, first of all, you need a fair taxation system. So Labour in government won't just talk the talk, we'll walk the walk when it comes to tackling tax evasion and tax avoidance. And let me tell you this, when we go back into government, there'll be no more Google deals where they only pay 1/10 of what they owe. We'll make sure those who are implicated in the Panama leaks are brought to book, and we'll close down the tax havens, and we'll stop the City of London being used as possibly one of the largest tax havens on the globe. That will be our fair taxation. But we also learned a lesson from this union. This union for years now has been arguing that what we need now is long-term investment in an industrial strategy. Now, we've committed ourselves in Labour to a long-term, patient investment. The state has a role to play here. Mariana Mazzucato, one of our economic advisors, has described it as the entrepreneurial state, an exercise that she undertook over the recent years. How the state can intervene to ensure it matches and develops private sector investment to ensure we have that long-term patient investment in our infrastructure, in our skills. That's what we're committed to. And the irony of it is, at the moment, is that George Osborne's consistently reduced corporation tax, and he was threatening to reduce it again to 15%. What the corporations are doing is actually not using these savings to invest. They're actually sitting, the estimate is anything between 500 and 700 billion pounds worth of earned income not being invested. What we were committed to is long-term patient investment from the state that would match that and draw that funding out in jobs, in infrastructure and in skills. And in that way, we would rebalance our economy. We would tackle all those areas that feel left behind at the moment as a result of losing traditional jobs and not making up in terms of the modernisation of our economy. So the third element as well was about new technology. I want us to retain the role as the financial centre of Europe, but I also want us to be the new tech centre of Europe as well. And that means, again, that long-term investment. But above all else as well, if we're going to have a share in this prosperity for everybody, that means, yes, fairness at work. How do you achieve fairness at work? Well, you know. It's about ensuring that we have trade union rights. All we're asking for in this country is for a government to abide by the ILO conventions, to enable us to have trade union freedoms once again. But I tell you this, we've seen the onslaught on trade unionism over the last 6 years under a Tory government and a coalition government dominated by Tories. And it's produced an existential threat to trade unionism in the Trade Union Act, which will undermine fairness at work, undermine the ability of working people to share in prosperity as we grow our economy. So in the first 100 days of a Labour government, we will scrap the Trade Union Act. It will all that was going on apace, the policy making, the involvement, the dynamic approach to the economic debate was going on apace. And then the EU vote, the Brexit vote occurred. Let me just say this about the European referendum campaign. The Labour Party's position, which I wholeheartedly endorsed, was to remain. Jeremy and I argued consistently that it should be remain, but reform. Recognise there are criticisms of the European Union, issues that have to be tackled, and that's what we campaigned on. I thought there were mistakes made in the campaign, I'll be frank with you. I think some of the claims at the beginning were so exaggerated that people were turned off. Some disbelief ruled rather than any confidence in the claims made by literally anybody. The second thing, I disagreed with appearing on platforms with Tories. And I'll tell you what. It enabled Boris Johnson and Farage to be able to paint us then, anyone appearing on the platform of the Tory, as part of the establishment, the Westminster bubble. I resented that. That's why Jeremy and I toured around the country doing meeting after meeting. There was this criticism that Jeremy hadn't done enough. He travelled hundreds, thousands of miles, doing meeting after meeting. I did the same. Those meetings were packed out to mobilise who? Our activists and Labour supporters. Our task, to be frank in the campaign, was to mobilise Labour voters, and if we could, because of Jeremy's attraction to young people themselves. We succeeded. We mobilised 7 out of 10 Labour voters to vote for Remain. If Nicola Sturgeon had performed on that, well, actually, they accused Jeremy of failing as a result of that. Well, on that basis, you would have sacked Nicola Sturgeon and all the others as well. We delivered a Labour vote for Remain as a result of that. And you know, for young people, 4-to-1 young people voted in favour of Remain. So I reject any criticisms of Jeremy's role in that campaign. Can I also say as well that now we've moved on, the result is not what we wanted in terms of Labour Party policy. But we have to build upon really I suppose, that decision of where we go from here. And what we're doing, and I think Jeremy's the best person to do this because he's established relationships in a comradely, friendly, respectful way with socialist and social democratic leaders right the way across Europe. And last Friday, he met them to talk about how we build a new relationship with them. We have to respect the referendum vote, the decision has been made. So how do we create a new relationship with Europe, which tries to gain and maximise the benefits we had from the EU, but also tackle some of the issues that people have raised in the referendum and overcome some of those disbenefits. And we've said there's some, with our comrades across Europe, we've said there's some bottom lines for us. And one of the red lines, which we've said very, very clearly, is that we will not allow any government to negotiate a deal with Europe that undermines the employment rights that we have now secured right the way across Europe. And also, many of you will work alongside EU citizens in this country, and many of you will have family members who work in Europe at the moment. So one of our bottom lines is that we demand the protection of the rights of EU citizens here, just as we demand the protection of UK citizens working across Europe. We do not want discrimination in our society. That's where we got to by the Brexit vote. And then the coup rolled out. I won't go into all the bloody details. No, I didn't want to swear in there. That was a description. It was a description, not bad language. I will not go into all the sanguine details of what happened, okay. But what happened, to be frank, within the Parliamentary Labour Party, there was an element of, I don't know, panic, really, about the potential of a general election, particularly if Boris Johnson got elected. And you know as well as I do, because your experience, you've witnessed it, there's been a small group within the Parliamentary Labour Party, or a small group, who just would not accept Jeremy's mandate from last September. In fact, some of you might recall his speech, the first speech he made of acceptance speech. During that very speech, people were briefing against him, resigning from positions to undermine him. That was unacceptable. You just, in a party, you accept democracy. You win some, you lose some, but you accept it. Why? Because we have a greater good that we're trying to establish. We're trying to transform society in the interest of all people. You cannot allow these divisions to undermine our project. But I believe, actually, the vast majority of our members simply want us to unite now. The NEC rightfully this week, rightfully, took the decision that Jeremy, under the Constitution, should appear on the ballot paper. You will have heard this morning that that's been challenged. It's been challenged and will be in the court likely this afternoon by a wealthy donor to the Labour Party. I do not believe it is right for a wealthy donor, one individual, to in any way challenge the right of 500,000 members to take a vote and exercise a decision on who should be our leader. That is unacceptable. Let me say this. I'd rather be fighting Tories, would you?
Yes.
I'd rather be fighting Tories. Just at a time when our economy is so fragile, when they're threatening yet another round of austerity, when workers' jobs are at risk, when we face cuts in our public services, when the food banks are mounting still, just at that time, this is when we need a Labour Party. This is when we need a Parliamentary Labour Party fighting the Tories, not fighting amongst themselves. Yesterday you will have seen or heard Theresa May's first speech. There were warm words about social justice and workers on company boards. You should have heard your debate earlier. But just remember, when she makes these warm-worded speeches, just remember, she's voted for every cut in welfare spending, every cut in working families' tax credits, every cut in public services, the withdrawal of care from literally millions. And she's voted for economic policies that turn this country into food bank Britain. Never forget that. And she supported the Trade Union Act as it went through Parliament as an existential threat to trade unions in this country. And now she's appointed a neoliberal hawk to the Treasury in Philip Hammond. And she's appointed a graduate of the Donald Trump School of Diplomacy to be our Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson. The real threat to this country now is this new Tory administration. Don't think this is a move to the centre or the left. She's establishing a right-wing, reactionary cabinet that will drive through continuing neoliberal economic policies that I think will cut us off for the best relationships we can in terms of other countries, and also I think will undermine and threaten the very livelihoods of those organisations, the very existence of those organisations that stand up for working people in this country, and that means the trade union movement. So now we're going to a leadership election with regard to the Labour Party, and I say now, let it be fair. Make sure Jeremy is on the ballot paper. Let's have a comradely, amicable debate and let the members decide. I'm confident if we can have that style of election, with Jeremy on the ballot paper, accommodate the debate about policies, I believe that we have a good chance of gaining the support for Jeremy Corbyn to take us forward as leader of the Labour Party. But I also say to Labour MPs, whatever the result, respect the mandate of that new leader. And I say to them again, I'd rather be fighting Tories. I want to say this to you as a union as well. In that struggle, I know, because of your past performance, that we'll be able to rely upon your support and commitment to democracy within our party, to the development of that fair society that we want. And I know that you'll show that solidarity, because that's within the heart of this union and always has been. It will mean, and I repeat time and time again, three things. Determination. You know, sometimes you just have to stand up and, well, be firm. And it takes determination when everything's coming at you. Also, it means courage. Sometimes when you're on your own, it takes courage to argue for what's right. But above all else, it takes that thing, as I said, we learned it 2 centuries ago when we founded our movement. We put it on our banners: unity is strength, injury to one is an injury to all, workers united will never be defeated. It takes solidarity. And I want to thank you again for the solidarity that you've shown to us in this time of real struggle. Solidarity.